You have woken at this hour before, perhaps many times, perhaps last night, perhaps tonight, before you found these words. Somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, your eyes opened, not slowly, like morning, suddenly, completely, as if someone had called your name in an empty room. And you lay there in the darkness, didn't you? Heart beating just a little too fast for someone who was just asleep, mind already turning toward tomorrow, toward the things you haven't done, toward the life you're not sure is yours anymore. You watched the clock. 3:40, 3:47, 4:2, and you wondered, in that silence that only exists at that hour, whether something is wrong with you. Whether this is just your body failing in one more way, whether you will ever sleep through the night again like you did when you were young and certain about things. But underneath the frustration, there was something else, a question you may never have spoken aloud. What if this means something? What if I'm not just failing to sleep, but being asked to wake up? You were right to wonder. Something phenomenal does happen at 3:40 a.m. The ancient traditions knew it, the monks and mystics built their lives around it. And tonight, I want to show you what they understood, what you have been sensing in the dark without anyone to confirm it. You are not broken. You have never been broken. Something has been trying to reach you in the only hour quiet enough for you to hear. Let me ask you something you may never have considered. What if the waking itself is not the problem? What if the waking is the invitation, and the only problem is what you do after your eyes open? You see, you have been taught to think of sleep as success and waking as failure. 8 hours, uninterrupted, that is the goal. Anything less is disorder, something to fix, something to medicate, something wrong with your body, or your mind, or your life. Isn't it so? This is what the world has told you, but the ancient traditions saw it differently, very differently. In the yogic tradition, there is a time called Brahma Muhurta. It means the hour of Brahma, the hour of the Creator. It falls between 3:30 and 5, 30 inches the morning, and for thousands of years it has been considered the most sacred time of the entire day. Not because the yogis decided it arbitrarily, because they discovered something about the nature of consciousness at this hour that most modern people have forgotten. The mind at 4 a.m. is different. The veil between the conscious and unconscious is thinner. The noise of the collective world, 8 billion minds thinking and worrying and wanting, falls to its lowest point. And in that window of silence, the mind becomes extraordinarily receptive to truth, to insight, to the still small voice that cannot be heard when the world is loud. This is not superstition. This is not one culture's belief. This is a pattern recognized independently by every major wisdom tradition on earth. You felt this, haven't you? That strange clarity at 4 a.m., the way thoughts seem sharper, more honest, more true, the way the silence feels different, heavier somehow, more meaningful. That is not your imagination. That is you sensing what the sages spent lifetimes learning to access. But before I tell you how to receive what is being offered in those hours, I must tell you a story. The story of a young man who could not sleep, and the hermit who showed him why. There was once a young man who had everything a person is supposed to want: a good position, a home, a family who loved him. From the outside, his life looked like success. But every night, somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, his eyes would open, suddenly, completely, as if someone had spoken his name in an empty room. And every night, he would lie there in the darkness, heart beating too fast, mind already racing toward tomorrow. The meeting he wasn't prepared for. The conversation he'd been avoiding. The life he wasn't sure was his anymore. Sound familiar? He tried everything. Herbs that promised deep sleep. Teas brewed from roots he couldn't pronounce. He stopped eating after sunset. He read books about rest until the books themselves put him to sleep, but still, at 4 a.m., his eyes would open. What would you do if you were this man? If every remedy failed, and every night the same waking came? He heard of a hermit who lived at the edge of the forest, a man known throughout the region not for wealth or status, but for something rarer, peace. People said you could see it in his eyes, that he moved through the world like water moves through a stream, never fighting, never forcing. The young man made the journey. He found the hermit sitting outside a small hut, mending a fishing net with hands that moved slowly, deliberately. The young man sat across from him and spoke his complaint like a confession. I cannot sleep. Every night I wake at 4 in the morning, and I cannot return to rest. I have tried everything. I am exhausted. I am failing at my work, my marriage, my life. What is wrong with me? The hermit continued mending his net. A long silence passed. Then, without looking up, he asked a question. When you wake at 4 in the morning, what do you do? The young man paused. No one had asked him this before. I lie there. I think about what I have to do tomorrow. I think about what I failed to do today. I count the hours until I have to rise. I grow angry at my body for betraying me. The hermit nodded slowly, as if this answer was expected. Stay with me tonight, he said. The young man agreed. What else could he do? He had tried everything else. That night, he slept on a simple mat in the corner of the hermit's hut, and then, as he knew it would, the waking came. His eyes opened. 4 a.m., the same hour, the same sudden alertness. But before he could begin his familiar ritual of frustration, he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. Come, the hermit whispered. It is time. The young man followed him outside. The world was completely dark. No moon, no stars visible through the canopy. Just blackness and the sound of his own breathing. Sit, said the hermit. They sat together on the cold ground. The young man waited for instruction, for a technique, for the wisdom he had traveled so far to receive. But the hermit said nothing. Minutes passed. The young man's mind began its familiar churning. He should be sleeping. He would be tired tomorrow. This was pointless. He had traveled all this way for nothing. His back hurt. His legs were cold. He thought about his bed at home. He thought about his wife, sleeping peacefully, unaware her husband was sitting in the dirt with a stranger at 4 a.m. How would he explain this when he returned? That he had come all this way to sit in silence and feel foolish. She would think he had lost his mind. He was wasting his time with this old hermit who probably slept fine every night and couldn't possibly understand. And then, slowly, something shifted. He ran out of thoughts. Not through effort, simply because he had thought them all, and there were no new ones left. His mind, exhausted from its own spinning, grew still, like a top that finally wobbles to rest. In that stillness, he began to notice. The darkness was not empty. It was full of sounds he had never heard. Insects, wind, his own heartbeat, the forest breathing around him. And then, so gradually that he couldn't say when it began, the darkness started to change. The black became blue, the blue became gray, the gray became rose and gold, and over the edge of the mountains the sun rose. Not quickly, like a light switched on, slowly, deliberately, as if the universe itself was waking up. The young man wept. He didn't know why he was weeping. He had seen sunrises before. Or had he? Had he ever truly watched one? had he ever been awake and still enough to receive it. "I have never seen this," he whispered. "I have never been awake for this." The hermit smiled. "My friend," he said, "you were never cursed with sleeplessness. You were being summoned. Every night at the hour when heaven is closest to earth, something was trying to reach you. But you were looking at the clock instead of the cosmos. You were counting the hours until morning, when morning itself was trying to show you something you cannot see any other way. This story is not about a man who lived long ago, in a forest you have never seen. This story is about you. You who have woken at 3:40 a.m. and wondered what is wrong. You who have lain in the darkness counting the hours until morning, not realizing that something was trying to show you what morning truly is. Isn't it so? Perhaps, like this young man, you have been looking at the clock instead of the cosmos. Perhaps you have been so focused on the sleep you're not getting that you missed the invitation hidden in your waking. This pattern, this recognition of the sacred pre-dawn hours, it did not come from one teacher or one tradition. It emerged independently, across centuries, across continents, in every culture that seriously sought the divine. The Buddha himself achieved enlightenment in the pre-dawn hours. After years of seeking, after the night of his final meditation and his battle with Mara, the demon of distraction, it was in the stillness before dawn that he touched the earth and became free. When even the ground was silent, he saw clearly for the first time. In Zen monasteries to this day, a bell rings at 3:30 inches the morning, not as punishment, not as discipline for its own sake, but because the masters understood that Zazen, sitting meditation, practiced at this hour is different. The mind that meditates at 4 a.m. touches depths that the afternoon mind cannot reach. You understand this, yes? You can feel why this hour is different. And in the Western tradition, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, rose before dawn each morning to write his meditations. The very book that has guided millions toward wisdom was written in those dark hours, when the palace was silent and even an emperor could hear his own thoughts clearly. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, he wrote, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Every tradition, every century, every corner of the earth where humans sought truth, they all found the same thing waiting in the hours before dawn. This cannot be coincidence. This is recognition. This is confirmation of what you have already sensed. Hello? Are you still with me? Do you see the pattern? Do you see what they all understood? The hours you have been resisting may be the hours calling you to your own awakening. The waking you labeled as disorder may be the only part of you still reaching for the sacred. Let me give you a way to understand this. The mind at 4 a.m. is like a lake at dawn. During the day, thoughts are stones thrown constantly into the water, ripples everywhere, nothing clear. You cannot see the bottom, you cannot see your own reflection, but at 4 a.m., before the world wakes and begins throwing its stones, the lake is glass. Every thought you think now creates perfect ripples. Every intention travels to the deepest depths. This is why the sages chose this hour, not because they were disciplined, because they understood that stillness is not something you create. It is something you receive. When you show up at the hour, the water is already calm. You know this feeling, don't you? You've felt the difference. The way a thought at 4 a.m. seems to carry more weight. The way a prayer offered in that silence seems to travel further. The way an insight that arrives before dawn stays with you in ways that daytime thoughts do not. That is not coincidence. That is recognition. Have you ever turned a radio dial and found that space between stations? That hiss of static where no signal lives? Most of your waking hours, your mind is like a radio tuned to 100 stations at once. Voices, demands, thoughts, worries, all broadcasting over each other. But at 4 a.m., something shifts. The stations go quiet. And in that silence between channels, you can finally hear the frequency you've been too busy to notice. Some call it intuition, some call it the soul, some call it God, some call it simply the deeper self. Whatever name you give it, it has been broadcasting all along. You simply needed an hour quiet enough to hear. Does this make sense to you? And now, my friend, I must speak directly to you. Not to the young man in the story, not to the monks and sages of old, to you. You have woken at this hour, perhaps many times, perhaps tonight, and some part of you has always wondered, is this random, or is something trying to reach me? I am here to tell you, you were right to wonder, you were right to sense that these moments were not ordinary. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You are being called. Think about the story you have been telling yourself. When 4 a.m. comes and your eyes open, what do you say inside your own mind? Something is wrong with me. I can't even sleep right. I'll be exhausted tomorrow. Why can't I be normal? What if you told a different story? What if, instead of, I can't sleep, you whispered, something in me is waking up? What if, instead of, I'm broken, you recognized, I'm being invited? The fear of the early waking has been heavier than the waking itself. Isn't it so? The frustration, the resistance, the fighting against what is happening, that is what exhausts you, not the waking. The waking is neutral. Your war with the waking is what drains you. You are allowed to stop fighting. You are allowed to receive what has been offered. Every time you woke and lay there frustrated, an invitation was being extended. You simply did not know how to receive it. Now you know, and knowing changes everything. Tonight, or the next time you find yourself awake in those dark hours, you will know, you will remember, and the remembering will transform the experience. This does not mean you must force yourself awake at 4 a.m. This is not about discipline or performance. I am not asking you to set an alarm or prove anything to anyone. It means that when you do wake, and you will understand that something phenomenal is available to you. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you receive what is being offered? Here is the simplest practice I can give you. When you wake at 3:40 a.m., do not reach for your phone. This is the most important instruction. The phone is a portal to the noise of the world. In the sacred hour, you are being offered silence. Do not trade the cosmos for notifications. Do not let the first thing you do in the hour of Brahma be checking what someone posted, what someone wants from you, what problem awaits. Instead, simply notice. You are awake. The world is dark. There is a silence available to you that will not exist in 2 hours, that most people will never experience because they sleep through it or scroll through it or fight against it. You may sit up or remain lying. You may light a candle or remain in darkness. There is no wrong way to be present. You understand this, yes? You have permission to simply be there. You do not have to achieve anything. You do not have to become enlightened before sunrise. You are allowed to simply sit in the dark and breathe and let that be enough. If you want something to do, I offer you this. Breathe. And with each breath, ask silently, what wants to be known? You are not trying to think your way to an answer. You are creating a space for an answer to arise. You are making yourself available to whatever the silence has to offer. You may receive words, images, feelings, a sudden clarity about something that has confused you, a peace that doesn't make logical sense. Or you may receive nothing at all but the experience of the stillness itself. All of these are valid. Presence is the practice. Everything else is gift. You are allowed to simply sit in the dark and breathe. That is enough. You are enough. And if sleep returns, let it return. You have not failed. You received what was offered in the moment it was offered, and then you rested. If you remain awake until dawn, you have been given a different gift, the one given to the young man in our story. The witnessing of the sunrise that most people sleep through their entire lives. Either way, you have received what was offered. You have been present to the hour that most of the world misses entirely. There is a kind of gardener who works only at night, not because she must hide her work, but because she understands something the day gardeners do not. The seeds she plants in darkness grow differently. Without the distraction of sunlight, without the noise of the busy garden, the seeds sink deeper. They take root in the quiet. By the time the sun rises, the invisible work is already done. Your 4 a.m. wakings are like this. They are not interruptions to your rest. They are invitations to plant seeds in the only soil quiet enough to receive them. What you think, what you feel, what you intend in those hours takes root in ways the daylight mind cannot understand. You see this now, don't you? You came to this teaching, perhaps wondering why you could not sleep. You leave understanding that you were never just failing to sleep, you were being invited to awaken. Something phenomenal does happen at 3:40 a.m. The world grows quiet enough for your soul to speak. The veil grows thin enough for truth to reach you. The mind becomes still enough to receive what has always been waiting. And now you know. You cannot unknow. Like the young man at the edge of the forest, you have been summoned. And now when you wake at 3:40 a.m., you will remember, you are not broken. You are being invited to witness the hour when heaven is closest, and witnessing is enough. You do not need to be a monk. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to wake at this hour every night, or perform any practice flawlessly. You need only be willing to receive what is being offered in the silence, and that willingness you already have, or you would not have listened this long. You have everything within you. You have always had it. The waking was never the problem. The waking was the gift. You simply needed someone to tell you. Now you know. Sleep well tonight, and if you wake at 3:40 a.m., smile. You are not broken. You are not alone. Something phenomenal is happening, and now you are ready to receive it. May you find peace in the dark hours. May you find presence in the silence. May you find, in the waking you once resisted, the very thing you have been seeking. Go gently. If these words have meant something to you, if you have felt seen tonight, leave one word in the comments. Just one word, awake. Let that be your acknowledgement, your small ceremony of recognition. You are awake, and you are not alone.